want to ask you a little bit about the workforce. Kind of what are your views on how maybe older people approach jobs versus younger people today are approaching jobs? We looked at a study earlier in the show that kind of showed that Gen Z cares more about like freedom when it comes to their work schedule, whereas older people care more about like mentoring or leadership opportunities or things like that. Do you have any kind of thoughts on how they view work differently?
Well, definitely. I mean, we are seeing with this mass resignation that the company loyalty that perhaps we saw, not even maybe in our parents, but maybe in our grandparents, that does not exist today at all. Millennials, Gen Z, we're very willing to just up and leave if we see something better. And frankly, I don't think that's necessarily all in all a bad thing, especially because if we look at our parents' generation, I do think that one of the contributors to the fact that more people come from single parent households is also the fact that women were very much in the workforce and remote working was not a thing. Loyalty to a company was a really big deal. I don't think it's bad that we are wanting maybe more work-life balance. But the thing is, we are not really striving for that for family. Oftentimes, millennials, Gen Z, we're striving for work-life balance in order to pursue, kind of, frankly, hedonistic things that don't really benefit us in the long term, much less society. That's one thing. And also the drive for remote working is also really, really huge. And I think that's going to be necessary going forward. I know a lot of friends who've been called to like bigger cities because job opportunities, but then the rents are so expensive. So, the housing explosion in price, that's not something that previous generations had to deal with either. And not to mention that because of the unending flow of immigration, wages also have just been stagnant. These are issues that older generations really haven't had to deal with. And I'm going to throw us younger people a bit of a bone. It is a different work environment than maybe what they were used to. And we're also much more competitive in the workplace in terms of, college degrees. Now, if you have just a 4-year degree, that's pretty much what high school was just a couple generations ago. It does not make you special, doesn't make you stand out. So it really is a different place. But with that being said, maybe one of the downsides is that we just don't really want to work as much, right? There's a middle ground here that I think perhaps we've lost between the generations.
Yes, it definitely seems like there are kind of these extremes now. Like before, a
Yes.
lot of people worked maybe like hard, like they worked a long day, but then spent time with their family. Now it's kind of like either you're someone who's, not really wanting to, or you're someone who maybe works all the time. But maybe that's just kind of a generalization, but I do think it's definitely become really split. But I want to ask you a little bit about kind of what you were referencing with work-life balance, maybe family life, dating. I know you recently had a baby, and you're kind of at the tail end of Gen Y like me. What have you found kind of from your friends and from people around you as far as entering that new period of your life?
Well, what's kind of surprising to me is I'm not that young. I'm 27, which is like very standard age, to be married and have kids. But at least among like my cohort, people I went to university with, people I went to high school with, I'm one of the first people to be married and to have kids, which I think is a trend we are seeing more and more. Women especially are delaying marriage, delaying having kids if they choose to do that kind of thing at all. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences between our generation and older ones. And they've even done studies, millennials are way less likely now to be living with a spouse or a partner versus either just roommates or maybe even with their parents. And that is concerning. One of the strongest social units in society is the family. And I think if we also kind of bring into account the way that birth rates affect the workforce later on, we are going to be in trouble. I know Elon Musk, he got some flack for saying that we need to get the birth rate up, but we really do. And we're already seeing in Europe that the low birth rates are really having a big effect on the way that they're able to manage things like retirement programs and things, because these are things people are supposed to pay into when they're younger to, I guess, benefit when they're older. But if you don't have that young workforce anymore, it raises problems. So, I mean, yes, everyone should be free to make their own choices. I don't think you should be forced to get married and have kids like at the end of a gun, that it should be like mandatory. But, there are societal and cultural implications to people's individual choices. And so I think we definitely, from a practical standpoint, if nothing else, really need to have a conversation about why young people aren't getting married and aren't having kids. And I know people on the left will often say, well, it's because we don't have paid family leave. It's because we don't have all these socialist programs. If we look at the countries where those programs come from, especially the Scandinavian countries, we see a remarkably low birth rate, even lower than the United States.